Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And a very good evening and a warm welcome to Newsline Live. This evening we have a very interesting guest. He is a former cabinet minister, and with the subject we are going to talk about with him, partly at least anyway, is something that he actually knows something about. But in the meantime, our neighbors, our superpower neighbors, India, we have the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, who has made a monumental U-turn for one of his great projects, if you like, and they passed new laws. They call the farm laws. And as our cards on our screen will show you, Mr. Modi has done a U-turn. He did a U-turn because the farmers, those affected directly by these new farm laws that had actually been passed as law in India, they caused so much of consternation that the farmers protested for nearly a year. They braved the winds, they braved the sun, they braved the cold and the rains, they braved COVID. Several people died and so on, because they felt so strongly about the introduction of these farm laws. And Mr. Modi was man enough to admit that they had failed to convince the people, the farmers, of the benefits of this law. And today, Mr. Modi has announced that they are doing a U-turn, that they will repeal those laws, and that the protesters can go home. Now, Mr. Modi, this whole thing is obviously very relevant to Sri Lanka too, because across our country there are grave protests about this very thing, about agriculture, the fertilizer issue, and the people are complaining all the time. And I certainly thought I'd just highlight this because obviously we can learn by example. If they're listening, if they're watching, and so on. On that note, let me introduce you to our guest tonight, the former Cabinet Minister of Petroleum, indeed, and so he knows a thing or two about our energy security and so on and so forth, Mr. Chandima Weerakkody. Very good evening to you.
Good evening, Faraz.
Now then, you saw this, what happened in India today, and a reversal of a key policy, a cornerstone policy of Mr. Modi's, attracted, of course, international coverage. But he was man enough to respond to the people's needs. Of course, there is an election coming as well.
Yeah, well, Modi is a people's prime minister. He's probably the strongest Indian leader who came up from the grassroots, who understands pulse of the people. We don't have to, and of course, when he realizes that whatever he proposed is not acceptable to the majority, he has to, as a democratic leader, leader who was elected through universal franchise, to reverse that. So and you don't have to go to India. When President Mahinda Rajapaksa was the president, you may recollect, when the private sector pension issue came up, the government was so adamant, some of the officials. But when the workers protested, he took a step back. So that is a prominent feature in a democracy.
Being responsive to the people's
reactions. Sri Lanka has been a healthy democracy, and we have had such leaders who had reversed when people exhibited their dislike and when it's proven that it's not practical. I hope Sri Lankan present leadership will also realize how people, how the farmers, how the farming community and the villagers feel about this fertilizer issue. What people say is, okay, if you can provide enough organic fertilizer, we are ready to cultivate. If you can give us enough at a reasonable price even, we're willing to work it out. And no one is against it. But the issue is the fact that we don't get enough stocks of fertilizer. Even now there is urea. I'm a man who is in the grassroots, and I'm a farmer planter too. I was told that there is urea available in our area, a few bags, but the cost of a bag, I was told, is about 10,000 rupees. It's some you get, I heard, for 8,000, 10,000. Yesterday I was told that there is a bag for 10,000. I mean, how can...
How much was it before?
1,500.
6 times.
Yeah. So how practical it is to use fertilizer now, the way things have happened. Of course, the prices have increased in the world market. But had we bought the time that we were to, would have bought for 235, now it's 900. So the issue is, ours is a export agriculture oriented country, especially tea, rubber, coconut and cinnamon and other varieties.
And cinnamon is a big business.
Cinnamon is a big business, but if we lose our market share due to lack of production, what is happening? What will happen?
We may not recover?
We may, no, I mean, there is continuously, if we don't get enough stocks of fertilizer that requires the requirement of the plantation. As of now, it has happened in our areas. Now we go to tea planters are really down, especially the smallholders. Now I represent Galle district, where you get the largest number of tea smallholders, and the tea factories are suffering. What will be the end result? The plucker is unemployed. Owner suffers because the production has dropped by 2/3, and then as a result of that, the factories cannot function. As a result of that, exporters doesn't get enough stocks to export, and as a result of that, we lose our depleting foreign exchange reserves further.
So 300 million kilos of Ceylon's finest is at risk.
Yeah, and also on the other hand, food security issue. As of now, I know even in our area, a lot of paddy land is deserted. I know even our lands, the people who are doing undergo VRs find it difficult. They are complaining. They're just doing it. We don't know what the outcome is going to be. And the vegetable cultivators, they complain. They don't get enough. So if there is the prediction, not by, I don't know about what the experts who advise the government say and what their opinion is, but the real rural level farmer community is predicting a food shortage if we continue this. So this is a very grave situation. Of course, we are all willing to accept if there is a proper organic fertilizer. And I know the cabinet, according to the cabinet approved liquid, organic, herbal, chelotic, nano fertilizer. And I know personally there is such fertilizer approved by the laboratories and tested in the field. But to date we have not imported those or started production here.
So what's Manda Nandalat Kamage doing then?
You have to ask him. I don't know. He has said
what
that.
What does it appear to you? Because you seem to know about this. What does it appear to you as?
I don't know. He has said, I heard today, he has said that there has been some corrupt issue. I mean, people talk about it. Because people...
But the ship, the hippo spirit, is not leaving. It's in a waiting area. And the demurrage is climbing every day.
Yeah.
Because they can't seem to sort out a commercial transaction. And at the end of the day, it appears that the people of Sri Lanka, yes, it is the people, it's not some private company, it's the people of Sri Lanka who will have to foot the bill of the demurrage, which may be much more than the value of the actual shipment.
Yeah, now
But that's a crying shame.
I saw a joke by the Secretary to the President.
Yeah.
He said that it's a transaction between private companies. I mean, does it mean that anyone can bring a shipload of fertilizer to Sri Lanka? There is a procedure that you have to follow before issuing a letter of credit. Letter of credit is an internationally accepted document.
Yeah.
Before that is issued, there is a procedure to follow in order to allow a fertilizer to be brought into Sri Lanka. NFS, the National Fertilizer Secretariat, has to first do a laboratory test.
Yes.
And then they have to do a field test. Upon such only, a committee that they have appointed can approve. Once it is approved only, whoever the authority can issue a letter of credit. So, due to negligence, we are faced with this situation. I mean, I saw it as saw it as a joke when the person at the level of President Secretary said it's a private transaction between...
How can it be private when the government of Sri Lanka is paying?
So, I mean, these officials don't have to answer to the people. When they retire, they can go and farm.
It appears
but it is the people who got elected have to face it. Elected government has to face it. And it is the people of this country who suffer. So you cannot allow this type of muddling up.
Just before the break, thank you for your questions. Just read this one out. Mr. Weerakkody, don't you think this headstrong president has been sent up the gum tree by some of the so-called Vietmaga Pandits?
I don't know, it's up to them to answer. But I mean, when Saubhagya Dakma was proposed, when that proposal was submitted to the people, people gave them overwhelming support. And 6.9 million unanimously decided that this is the way forward for the country. But I know personally, even I was heading a committee when formulating this policy. I was chairing that, and present State Minister Kanaka Herath was the vice chair. And then we had a series of consultation. Lots of people, experts so-called, people who are really into business, who they volunteered, they spent their valuable time, came from various places and contributed. So based on their contribution, we formulated policy. And we gave them an undertaking that once the government comes into power, these proposals will be implemented and they will be kept in touch so that their inputs will be used. But we don't know what happened to those policy papers, way forward, and we just didn't do a haphazard thing. We even proposed what acts need to be amended in order to see to it that the policies can be practically implemented. But I don't know who has those documents and who's
whether they even
handling it, whether they have even looked at it. So it's very, like, even we feel ashamed because we are not people as professional people who did not have any other work to do. We spend a lot of time. Those professionals and others who gave their inputs spent their time and money, but I don't see what's happening.
We are going to read out one message, then go into a break. The person who's sending us this message is asking you, or stating to you, tell your esteemed guest that this viewer asks that with your intelligence, did you not know that this is what this government would have done?
Well,
did you not even guess?
No, well, it's like this. We are a democracy. Now, the time this election,
because the same thing
held,
happened the last time as well.
The election was held. People wanted a leader who can deliver, because last government there were two leaders and they were like at loggerheads. So as a result of that, country was not in a proper set to move forward. So there was strongly instability. People wanted to come out of it. That's why, and the intellectual so-called Weerakkody.
So you got taken in by that as well.
But
you too got taken
as
in
as an elected member, everyone thought that this is the option way forward available, and people at the same time, they were fed up with the politicians. They thought a non-politician who was advised by the professionals could deliver. So we, in a democracy, we thought that this could be because the policies presented, and if you look at Saubhagya Dakma, the policies presented there are certainly the best possible option available to Sri Lanka. But the issue now is those policies are not being practically effectively implemented, of course, due to, you have to understand, COVID issue is also there.
Can we come back to it, because we're running over for a short break to have a look at this evening's headlines from the News First primetime news team. See you on the other side.
News First, News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And welcome back to Newsline Live. I'm in conversation with Mr. Chandima Weerakkody, Member of Parliament, and of course a former Cabinet Minister of Petroleum. I want to ask you about this business about the closure of the Sapugaskanda refinery. The Sapugaskanda refinery is 54 years old. It was started in 1967. It's rather like an old car right now, isn't it? And they're saying that they don't have enough product to deal with it and so on. Is it up to date?
Well, it was initially started in 1969.
69, okay.
69.
67,
and to generate 50,000 barrels per day, which was more than enough for that era. But now the consumption is over 100,000. So, like there was only once that it has been refurbished. Thereafter, the various people are talking about it, and during the tenure of my
in your tenure,
I got the petroleum experts, financial experts, and formulated a committee, and we did a thorough study to decide as to what should be done and how it can be done.
Did it also, your studies, did it include the use of what they call a hydrocracker?
Yeah, no, the petroleum experts recommended that the production should be increased up to 100,000 and a hydrocracker should be installed.
And the hydrocracker does, please tell him.
Yeah, now, as of now, by that time, the profit that production of 1 barrel generated was just $1. According to the experts, once it's upgraded
and with the use of the
hydrocracker, the profit goes up to $10 to $12 per barrel.
From 1 to 12.
From
10 to 12 times.
Present profit of $1. I don't know. It's by 2016. To go up to 10 to 12, between 10 to $12.
Right.
And the cost, estimated cost was 2.1 billion.
Right.
And also we used actual consumption and actual prices from 2011 to 2015. And once actuals were put and decided, we could generate a profit of 346 million per year to 460
million
dollars per year. Like in 2000, the profit that we could have generated in 2011 was 346 billion. But by 2015, the profit that we would have generated was 465 million US dollars. There is not a single company or any venture in this country that can generate such a huge profit. And the entire requirement of 2.1 billion could have been paid in 5 to 6 years maximum. So had we...
The investment was 2.1
billion US.
So, you know, this is all wonderful stuff.
Yeah, and the issue is, had we done it by, the whole thing could have been completed within maximum 3 years. By now we are in operation. And not only that, we would have saved a lot of money, generated a lot of profit, we are today maintaining stability.
You know, I want to ask you this, because it's all wonderful stuff, and I'm almost ready to weep, because what on earth happened to your proposal? Why wasn't it taken up?
Well, that was unanimously approved by the petroleum experts, then by the financial experts.
Yeah.
Then there was this economic committee chaired by the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
He appointed a committee of...
Who was the Prime Minister then?
Ranil Wickremesinghe appointed a committee comprising Indrajit Kumaraswamy. By that time he was not the secretary, not the governor, and then the secretary to the Treasury, secretary to the Minister of Petroleum, and then Sarath Rajapatirana, advisor to the President, is the Sri Lankan who has held to date the highest position at World Bank.
Okay.
A financial expert who has had international exposure.
Okay, so a good guy.
And Weerakkody as the Prime Minister's representative. Then they had interviews with the committees that recommended the proposal, and they unanimously approved it.
Right.
According to the proposal, Sri Lanka didn't have to, we didn't have to even give a sovereign guarantee. We have not selected a party as such.
So it was just
the proposal way forward, which is practical, and it was possible for us to raise funding.
So who shot it down, Chandima Weerakkody?
Well, the former Prime Minister, and the former Minister of Finance,
who was
at the committee, Ravi Karunayaka.
Okay.
They stopped it, and thereafter nothing happened.
I think it's absolutely,
so it's
tantamount to criminal.
Unfortunate.
Hey, but you got a legal background. Have you got a legal background?
Absolutely.
Right. In that case, I put it to you that this is tantamount to a criminal act. Yeah. And they ought to be tried for that.
Yeah. I mean, what is the point in trying? We have to now, today in Parliament, I presented the proposal. I tabled it so that at least this government could make use of it, because after 2 years of power, suddenly this government also has realized, according to the minister, that it is more beneficial and profitable to import refined oil rather than to use the refinery by generate refined products by importing crude oil. So it's, I mean, had it been the case, because when we did the study, there was a profit of $1 per barrel. So it was a margin maintained. But if it has further deteriorated, and if no action had been taken, and if it had run only because there were 1,300 employees working there, only to pay their salaries, it again is a crime. Because the issue is, every penny that we spend belongs to the people of this country. So as governments, I think first thing should be, I believe hope this government will take this advice, at least here onwards, every penny must be utilized looking at the ROI. If we function that way, we will be successful.
And we've only got about 2 or 3 minutes now, but what about Chandima Weerakkody, as a former minister as well? What about, why can't we have some stability of prices? I know we don't have oil in our back garden or gas or whatever, but why can't we have something based on variable duty, which is linked to the world prices, and the duty factor will vary so that the cost price and thereafter the selling price can be stabilized.
Well, if we can subsidize, I mean, we have been, as governments, even to date, as of today, we are subsidizing. But the issue is as to whether we have enough reserves to do that. Now, according to the minister himself, one main reason for shutting down the refinery is the fact that the country government is not in a position to afford to purchase. So in such circumstances, it is not practical. But what would be appropriate, what would have been appropriate, and what will be appropriate would have been and will be to have a formula. When I was minister, I was the first one to present a cabinet paper to
have a fuel formula.
Formula, because formula is transparent. Now,
is your formula, is that about the same as what I was asking you? Like a variable duty?
Not a variable duty. Do whatever the world market price is, unless, of course, if it shoots up to a level that is unbearable by the general public, then the government should intervene. But the main issue that time was the debt that the CPC was carrying. So my proposal was to take the debt burden of CPC, because it's not due to, of course, there are issues at the CPC, but not mainly due to whatever issue at the CPC, that there is a debt burden on CPC. Government's decision to subsidize has been the burden. So take it over, government can take it over and let the CPC run with through a formula, and that will be, then people will not be disgruntled.
We've got 1 minute here. How much of corruption goes on in this
is probably one of the main reasons for our downfall. I think as the government we should be transparent to the general public and efficient and effective, because the general public is now very alert and they are looking at everything. They know, like those days, they didn't have access to information, but now social media is in this situation. So
they are in trouble. They're in trouble.
Unless we get together.
It's now time for the prime time news from the News First team. Thank you for watching. Take care and God bless you.
Thank you for inviting.